you remember Mark Sanford of the Appalachian Trail fame in South Carolina. Of course, the governor there, he winds up having a mistress, even though he was Mr. Family Values. He cries about how she's his soulmate, et cetera, et cetera. Well, look, it turns out there's at least some moral people in South Carolina because his lieutenant governor, Andre Bauer, says, hey, you know what, this is unacceptable, and he's got to go, okay? Now, we now have a recorded statement of Andre Bauer talking to some of his supporters at the Fountain Inn and this included state lawmakers he was talking to and 115 residents, okay, at a town hall meeting. And, well, not what I would call the epitome of morality. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with sex or anything like that. This just gives you his worldview. Now, this recording, it starts out bad. The things that he's saying starts out bad. It gets further and further atrocious as he goes along. So let's listen in first. Clip number 11.
The fact that we continue to improve education cannot really be improved until we address the real problem. I can show you a bar graph where free and reduced lunch has the worst test scores in the state of South Carolina. You show me the school that has the highest free and reduced lunch, and I'll show you the worst test scores, folks. It's there, period. And so how do you fix it? Well, you say, look, if you receive goods or services from the government, then you owe something back. If you don't pay your taxes, do you think the government's going to come get you? They are. All of us. There's repercussions if we don't do certain things. If you receive goods and services from the government, there are no repercussions. We don't make you take a drug test. We ought to. We don't even make you show up to your child's parent-teacher conference meeting or to the PTA meeting. You go to a school where there's an active participation of parents, and guess what? They have the highest test scores. So what do? You say, look, folks, if you receive goods or services from the government and you don't attend the parent-teacher conference, bam, you lose your benefits. We're going to have to do things like that. We can't afford to keep just giving money away. My grandmother was not a highly educated woman, but she told me as a small child to quit feeding stray animals. You know why? Because they breed. You're facilitating the problem. If you give an animal or a person ample food supply, they will reproduce. Especially one that don't think too much further than that. And so what you've got to do is you've got to curtail that type of behavior. They don't know any better.
All right. First let's start with free and reduced lunches leads to the worst test scores. Now, that is not a causal connection, okay? Now, do they have the worst test scores? Yes. Could it be, Lieutenant Governor Bauer, that it's because they're under the worst socioeconomic conditions, and that's why they need free or reduced lunches? And that those socioeconomic conditions have, for time immemorial, led to worse test scores, unfortunately worse educational achievement, because they don't have a lot of opportunity. So now, what is your answer to that? Well, great, let's take away their free lunch. Yeah, that'll really help, okay? I can tell you from personal experience that being hungry does not lead to being able to concentrate better or to focus on your studies better, okay? By the way, do you know what percentage of South Carolina students get free or reduced lunch and participate in that program? It must be the minority riffraff, right? I mean, that was oozing from his message. 58% of students in South Carolina. So then that leads us to our second part. Lieutenant Bauer, you don't, Lieutenant Governor Bauer, I don't want to do him the service of calling him Lieutenant Bauer. You don't want to give 58% to all these people, and you don't want them to breed like stray animals, right? Because your grandmama taught you such lovely moral lessons, okay? So what, 58% of the people in South Carolina, they shouldn't get that, the students shouldn't, and their parents shouldn't be allowed to breed because they're not of your high caliber. Now, he says active participants, that parents who are active in their kids' lives lead to higher test scores. Absolutely true, okay? Now, but did you think, Mr. Bauer, that perhaps a person cannot attend a PTA meeting because they're poor and they've got 2 jobs, and that they can't make it to the PTA meeting because they're having trouble putting food on the table? Now, the reality is some are that way and some are not. I get that, man. I'm not trying to make heroes out of everybody. And do I wish that all the parents would participate in their kids' lives more? Absolutely, because that is the number one indicator. Now, but the question isn't that. The question is, how do you get to that result? And is the best way to get to that result by punishing people, by taking away lunches from hungry kids, by taking away money from parents who are struggling to make it as it is and send their kids to school so they can get that education? Do you think that's the best way to do it? Well, of course, for right-wingers, punishment, judging other people, and apparently lacking all morality when it comes to understanding the plight of the poor, the middle class in this country. 58% of the students in South Carolina, they have no interest. None. Stray animals. I mean, my God, man. How pathetic and ridiculous can you be? Look, it is one thing to say we've got problems, and we do. It's another thing to try to address them legitimately. It's another third thing, what am I, over Roberts? To say to people, hey, listen, you know what? You're like animals to me, and I'm not going to let you breed by giving you money. I don't want to encourage you, because I know how you are. And like we don't see the reference that he's making here. And the good people of South Carolina don't understand what he's talking about those people. And hey, look, let me ask him. Hey, Bauer, look, who are you referring to? Are you referring to all the poor white people in South Carolina, the poor black people, the poor Hispanic people, all the middle class? Is that who you're referring to? Please come out and tell me, hey, yeah, you know what? Middle class and poor in South Carolina, I got no interest in you. If you're a country club Republican, then I love you. And let's talk about how they're eating our money, these poor are, right? But the rest of you I don't give a damn about. Or do you mean just the black people in South Carolina? Because those are the kind of references that have been used against black people in the South for several hundred years now. And you're telling me, of course, you're naive about that and you have no idea, you never heard that before. And of course you didn't mean it about black people, and that is not code words that you use in the South all the time. Okay, all right, then tell me that you mean it about 60% of your population. Which way is it? Either way, it's despicable. He's going to try to explain himself. There's a news report out of South Carolina. Now let's listen to this. A weasel try to get out of it. Clip number 12.
He says he stands by those remarks.
Conservation. That's what Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer thought he would be asked about at Saturday's gubernatorial forum in Columbia. Instead, he spent part of the day defending a controversial comment. At a town hall meeting in Fountain Inn, Bauer compared the cycle of the government giving money to the poor without expecting anything in return to feeding stray animals, saying, quote, "You're facilitating the problem if you give an animal or person ample food supply."
There was no way that I was trying to tie animals to people.
Really?
What I was trying to talk about is a dependency culture. And that just like when you feed animals, you create a dependency.
You
According
idiot,
to the
you just did it
Associated
again.
Press, Bauer says poor parents of students who eat free or reduced price meals in school cafeterias should be required to attend parent-teacher conferences, or the students should go without.
Well, my solution is, if you receive goods and services from the government, you ought to have to attend a parent-teacher conference. You ought to have to attend a PTA meeting. I really think it's deplorable that people have made this so political, but that they don't have the backbone to give any answers or any ways to change this. Their answer is just keep funding it.
Yeah, okay, by the way, do you understand that? Do you understand how unbelievably stupid that is? So if you have a detached parent, the one that Bauer's talking about, okay? So let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, the parent's just sitting on his ass, right? And he or she won't go to a parent-teacher conference, and a kid gets a free or reduced lunch, right? So when the parent does not go because he's detached and doesn't give a damn, you punish the kid by taking away his lunch. Yeah, that's genius. That's genius. You know what that'll do? Here's what I'm sure it'll do. I'm sure it'll solve the problem in South Carolina. You know what? And those kids, well, when they go hungry, well, then they'll know. You know what? Maybe my parents should have showed up to a parent-teacher conference when they were detached in the first place. Or maybe they should quit their 2 jobs to show up to parent-teacher conferences. Either way. Look, again, the underlying problem is an important one. Study after study shows the more a parent is involved in a kid's life and their educational standing and their career, et cetera, the better the kid does. But there are positive ways to encourage that and negative, ridiculous, clownish ways to encourage that, as Lieutenant Governor Bauer is trying to indicate here. And one way not to do it is to compare their parents to animals, okay? Look, if you left it to me, I would study the issue and I'd say, I need my advisors to give me all the options, okay? Give me carrots, give me sticks. And I'm not close to the idea of incentives and disincentives, as anyone who's watched this show knows, okay? So, for example, one thing that occurs to me is do a public education campaign. Now, I know what the conservatives will say. Oh, yeah, a public education campaign. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, spend more money on that. Yeah, whoa. First of all, we know it works. We did it with smoking, and the public education campaign against smoking in this country has worked miracles, okay? So can it work? Absolutely. So you educate parents, hey, every study in the world shows if you ask your kids about their homeworks, they're going to do a hell of a lot better. Can you please do that, okay? Will that help a little bit? I'd be surprised if it didn't, given the track record of that kind of program. But if you come to me and say, hey, look, here is how we can tie the money given to parents with their own performance and not with their kids and not whether their kids are going to starve or not, okay, but about them, then I'm willing to listen to it. Look, I agreed with welfare reform. Joseph Stiglitz, who is now considered some sort of, wild-eyed progressive in economic matters and want to regulate the banks, he's the one that helped Bill Clinton pass welfare reform. And you know what welfare reform was? Hey, listen, we want to give you a hand up, okay? And if you're in a bad spot, we want to help you to get you to a better place. But you've got to show me that you're actually looking for a job. And if you don't, well, then at some point I got to cap these or I got to cut it off. I think that's reasonable, and that's not to punish the poor. That's to give right incentives and disincentives. So I'm perfectly open to that. What I'm not open to is calling the poor and the middle class dogs and animals that shouldn't be allowed to breed and punishing their kids. That's the difference between Democrats and Republicans.